Hey, hey, hey. Time for the Out of This World story from rSpace. Don't leave your heart or your wallet anywhere near people who think loyalty is just another thing to break. Today on rSpace, sometimes the people closest to you might be the ones sharpening knives behind your back. My wife slept with my friend, so I exposed her secret and ruined her relationship with her business partner. Throwaway because I have friends who know my account. Names are fake for the same reason. I, 32 male, and my wife, Allison, 30 female, have been married for 5 years now. Through it all, we've been fully supportive of each other. I work in advertising, and until recently, she worked in sales. But when she said she wanted to start a business with her friend, I was right behind her. I took over with providing for the household and even provided some money to invest in her business. Before she started working in sales, she was very focused on art, and admittedly, she was extremely talented at it. She specialized in sculpture in particular. When we were dating, she made all sorts of tiny figures that she hand-painted and gave to me as gifts. I still had all of them sitting around on my desk at work and my end table at home. I treasured them, not just because of the sentimental value, but because they were genuinely charming and well-made, with unique designs. A lot of my coworkers expressed interest in buying them, and she started taking orders. Soon, she started dealing with more orders than she could pack and fulfill on her own, and she considered turning it into a full business. That's where her friend Stephanie comes in. Allison and Stephanie had known each other from college, where they both studied marketing, but Stephanie had climbed a bit faster up the corporate ladder, and she ended up with more connections as a result. So the idea was that Allison would handle the production, while Stephanie worked on the marketing and sales. The goal was to get her figurines into local stores, and with time, start moving across the country. It was ambitious, but I'd seen their business plan, and it made sense. They were already selling the figurines online, and they were pulling in a respectable number of sales. Things were going well. The business started to pick up some speed after a local influencer reviewed one of her figurines in a video. Orders nearly doubled overnight. We were both exhausted by it, but it was exciting. I'd always been proud of her talent, and now other people were starting to recognize it too. And now I needed to talk about Tyler, 31 male. He's been my best friend since high school. He's a good guy, but he's always been a little unfocused. He dropped out of college because he spent most of his time playing video games, and even now, he has trouble holding down a stable job. Despite that, I still like to grab a beer with him once in a while and try to talk him into getting his life together. When he heard about Allison and Stephanie's business, he took an interest. He came by the house to see how it worked and said he was fascinated with it. When he heard that they needed to update their website, he volunteered to handle it. He's a web developer, and his freelance web development jobs keep him alive when he's out of work. So it seemed natural for him to volunteer his services. Unfortunately, that's where everything fell apart. First, he started coming by the house more often. That didn't seem unusual since he was working with Allison's company now. The three of them would have meetings where they'd discuss the website layout and how to improve their online presence. As Allison's husband and an investor, I sat in on a few of those meetings at first, but with time I stopped making an appearance because I had work of my own to deal with. Eventually, they stopped having their meetings in the house and started meeting up at a nearby co-working space that Stephanie used. I didn't think anything of it. I trusted both my wife and my friend. I'd known Tyler for more than half of my life. In that time, I'd had a few girlfriends and several crushes, and Tyler had never once made a move on any of them. I always thought of him as a real bro, the type of guy who understands what's off limits. Even when I was done with a girl, Tyler wouldn't look her way. Then there was the fact that Stephanie was always with them too. That gave me the impression that Allison was always in safe hands. I just looked at it like she was going to work. I didn't worry about her spending time with other guys while she was there, so why would I worry about her and Tyler? Unfortunately, there was a piece of information I was missing that changed everything. I found out later that their team meetings at Stephanie's co-working space weren't happening as often as they claimed. I was talking to Stephanie one evening about their progress, and she mentioned that the website was taking longer than expected. She said that she wanted to ask Tyler what the delay was in their next meeting. Allison had gone out for a meeting the day before, so I asked Stephanie why she hadn't brought it up at the previous meeting. She looked confused and told me that the last time they all met was a week ago. I immediately knew that Allison and Tyler had been lying to me, but I didn't say anything else to Stephanie. I just told her that I must have been thinking of something else, and we moved on to another topic. But that stuck in my mind. My wife had specifically told me that she was meeting with Stephanie and Tyler. She always mentioned the three of them. If she was lying about Stephanie being there, then there was only one thing I could really suspect. But I decided to start paying more attention. I wanted to get my facts straight before I jumped to conclusions. I mean, my wife and Tyler both meant way too much to me for me to jump to a very dangerous conclusion. It was possible that there had been a mix-up. Maybe Stephanie had forgotten, or maybe Allison had just gone to work alone with Tyler that one time. But I wasn't going to just trust whatever she told me anymore. So the next time she told me she had a meeting with the two of them, I looked closely. She was wearing a lot of perfume and one of her lower cut blouses. It wasn't sexy enough to obviously be for a date, but it was definitely a bit spicier than what you'd expect for a meeting. I waited for some time to pass, and then I texted Stephanie casually to ask how the meeting was going. She told me they weren't having a meeting that day. Again. Now I was certain of it. Allison and Tyler were meeting up secretly, and they were using Stephanie as cover. The only logical explanation was that they were having an affair. Now I just needed to prove it. My first bit of proof was the text message where Stephanie confirmed that they weren't meeting. Now I needed more. I texted Allison asking how the meeting was going. She said it was great and told me Stephanie and Tyler said hi. That was good enough for me. Now I had proof of her lying. But it still wasn't enough. So when she got home the same day, I pretended that I didn't have a clue what she was up to. I acted like I was happy to see her, and I took an interest in her day. But I was just waiting for her to go to sleep so I could go through her phone. I couldn't bring myself to lie down beside her that night, so I told her I had some work to finish up. When I could hear her light snoring, I knew it was time to get back to work. I slipped into the room and took her phone from where it was charging. I already knew her passcode. She never changed it. I remember thinking that it was stupid that my hands were shaking. I was just going through some texts. What was there to be afraid of? Looking back, it made sense. My whole life was about to change. I went straight to her messages with Tyler. As soon as I opened it up, their most recent messages popped up, and I was jump scared by some pretty unpleasant messages. They weren't flirty or teasing, they were downright sexual. I really don't want to go into detail here. I don't think I can without getting my post removed, but it should be enough when I say that I almost smashed her phone out of anger. I forced myself to scroll back through their messages. There were flirty jokes, plans to have meetings, and nudes flying back and forth between them. Eventually, I got to the very beginning, and it was just normal work stuff. Her asking him for updates and him confirming deliverables. None of that mattered to me. I screen recorded all of the messages that proved their affair and sent them to myself. Then I plugged her phone back in and went to the living room. I sat in the dark alone, reading through their messages for more than an hour. They weren't just planning their little meetups and recapping their sessions. They were also laughing about how Stephanie was the perfect cover. They were even making fun of me for being clueless about everything. Saying I was devastated would be putting it mildly. I felt betrayed on two fronts. My wife was cheating on me and she was doing it with my best friend. This was a guy who was the best man at my wedding. He was the one man I trusted the most in the world, and he was having an affair with my wife. I didn't know who to talk to about it since the two people I trusted most were the ones who were stabbing me in the back. All I knew was that I couldn't bottle this in, or I'd go crazy. And that's why I'm here right now. I think I just needed somewhere to vent about everything that's going on, and maybe get some advice on what to do next. I haven't confronted either of them yet, but I know I can't pretend everything is still normal for much longer. I feel sick when I look at Allison, and the last time I saw Tyler, I wanted to knock him out. All I know is that I need to cut the two of them out of my life. I can't keep this up for much longer. Tyler's a complete disgrace. The man couldn't hold down a job, so he decided to hold down your wife instead. You kept him around out of loyalty, and he used that to slide into your marriage like it was some sort of backup plan. Now you know the truth. That's painful, but it's power too. You get to decide what comes next. And honestly, you already seem to know. You're done with both of them. Good. They made their choices. Now you make yours. Update. Thanks for all the comments and support on my post. I read every single comment, even the harsh ones. You all gave me some much needed clarity. I promised an update, and I'm back to deliver. After that night, I took a few days to plan things out. I could have rushed into a confrontation as soon as I found out about the affair, but I didn't want just a fight. I wanted them to face consequences for what they did. So the first thing I did was get in touch with a lawyer. I needed to figure out the best way to go about the whole thing. I didn't want Allison getting anything from me, but there was also the issue of her business. I made some rather significant financial investments in it, and I wanted to know what I'd be entitled to from it. My lawyer gave me some disappointing news. Because I'd contributed capital without any formal contract, it would be hard to prove that I had any real stake in the business. That meant it would be difficult for me to recoup my investments. I wasn't happy to hear that. The truth is, I didn't really care about the money I'd invested. It wasn't an insignificant amount, but it was money that I'd long forgotten about. What really bothered me was the idea of Allison and Tyler cheating on me and then profiting off of this business when I was gone. That felt like an injustice that I couldn't allow. But when the time came to serve her with divorce papers, I suddenly knew what needed to be done. I waited for a day when the three of them had one of their meetings. A real meeting, where Stephanie was actually present. Allison told me about it in the morning, and I reached out to Stephanie to make sure. Once I confirmed that, it was time to start my plan. I waited for a while to give them a chance to settle into the co-working space, and then I showed up and announced. The three of them were surprised to see me. I hadn't been to a meeting in a long time and had never been to the co-working space. They were all wondering what I was doing there. When they got past their initial surprise, Allison said, "Hey, babe," and Tyler had the nerve to smile at me. I ignored them both and walked over to Stephanie. I had a USB drive in my hand with a selection of screenshots of the messages that I'd taken from her phone. I left out the more explicit stuff that I could get in trouble for sharing, and mostly included the parts that revealed Tyler and Allison's affair. But there was more. I also made sure to include the parts where they made fun of Stephanie, especially when they laughed about how oblivious she was to her role as their cover story. But there was more. They were pretty brutal about Stephanie. In their messages, the two of them had made fun of her. It wasn't pretty. They said she was demanding and called her all sorts of horrible names. Allison had even said that was why she couldn't keep a man. Naturally, I made sure to include all of that on the drive too. When I handed her the drive, she looked at me confused and asked what it was. I just told her it was something she really needed to see, and that it affected their business. I said she could take a few minutes to go through what was on it. Tyler was still smiling, but Allison was starting to look unsure. She kept looking between me and the door, like she wanted to run out any second. Stephanie seemed unsure, but she plugged it into her laptop and started reading. She'd only been reading for a few seconds when her expression changed. First, her mouth dropped open and then her eyes widened. She looked horrified. After a minute, she was unmistakably angry. The smug grin slid off of Tyler's face now, and he was starting to catch on that something was wrong. Allison had picked up on it earlier than him, and she'd been trying to catch Stephanie's attention the whole time. "Steph, what's going on?" Stephanie didn't answer. She was still going through the little presentation I'd prepared for her. She looked just as shocked as I'd felt when I'd found out what those two were up to. When she was finally done, she just looked at the two of them and asked what was wrong with them. She couldn't believe that they'd use her as cover for their affair. I stepped back and let Stephanie take it from there. Allison looked between the two of us and said she could explain. She didn't even know who to address first. She kept tripping over her words, but she couldn't really say anything. How could she justify her affair, and how'd she use Stephanie at the same time? Stephanie steamrolled right over her and brought up how much she'd done for their business and how unfair it was for the two of them to treat her like that. And that's when she said the words I'd been waiting to hear. She was done. She was out of the business, and she'd be reaching out to all of her contacts to make sure they wouldn't work with them. Stephanie snatched up her things and stormed out of the room. She didn't even give me back the USB drive. I didn't mind. Allison attempted to follow her, but stopped when she remembered she still had an angry husband to deal with. She walked up to me and said she could explain. She said it was just a case of emotions running high because they were working together. Neither of them had meant for it to happen, and it didn't mean she didn't love me. Tyler stood there, looking like a deer in headlights, nodding stupidly. He looked as guilty as I'd ever seen a person look. I told her not to bother with the excuses. They were the two people I'd trusted most, and they both stabbed me in the back in the worst way. I let Allison know that I was filing for divorce and she'd be served very soon. She started crying and begged me to at least talk to her first. Tyler grabbed my arm and said, "Wait, man, you don't have to do that." I couldn't help it. I tried to keep myself from getting violent, but at that moment, I exploded and swung at him. I'm still a little disappointed because he stepped back, so it didn't connect too well, but it got the message across. I didn't want to talk to him. He didn't even try to fight back. He just went across the room and sat down. Allison was pulling at my sleeve, begging me to just give her a chance and talk to her. She tried to blame the affair on stress. She insisted that the mental strain of running a business wore her down, and it made her emotional. And that's what caused the affair. The excuse was so weak that I didn't bother to reply to her. I shook her off my arm and walked out the door. The two of them followed me down to the parking lot. I didn't say anything, but Allison caused a scene as she kept pleading with me while we walked out of the building. Everyone was staring, but I didn't care. I wouldn't see any of these people again. Allison was the one who knew most of them. She was still begging me to give her a chance when I got to the car, but I just got in and drove away without a word. The whole situation sucked, but I was kind of satisfied with how things had gone. Stephanie knew the truth, and she was threatening to blow up the business. It served Allison right. She was going to watch everything she'd built crumble because of her own actions. Stephanie made good on her promise. She completely cut herself off from the business, and by the end of the week, all of her contacts had pulled out. Allison's business was left with no distribution network. I found out from Stephanie that Allison had tried to go behind her back and reach out to some of the contacts on her own, but she'd poisoned the well already. She'd told them everything Allison had done and let them know that she wasn't a reliable business partner. We still had to deal with the divorce too. It hasn't been finalized yet, but things are looking good for me. It looks like there's going to be an even split of marital assets, which I don't really consider fair since she's the one who cheated on me. But what can you do? You're already starting off with a disadvantage as a man in a divorce. The one thing I'm happy about is that it's looking like I won't need to pay any spousal support. That's just fine with me. I feel like I've supported her more than enough. more than she ever deserved, really. Tyler tried to reach out to me a few times. He called over and over, but when I kept ignoring his calls, he just texted me. He apologized and admitted that he really messed up. He said he wanted to meet up so he could talk with me and set things straight. I told him that I never wanted to see him again, and if I did, I'd be sure to break his jaw this time. He kept asking me to just give him a chance, so I blocked his number. As for Allison, she's been a wreck every time I've seen her in court. She took the collapse of her business pretty hard. She cornered me after court one afternoon and told me that I'd ruined everything she'd worked hard to build. I told her that she was unfaithful to her husband and mocked her business partner behind her back. Anything that went wrong was completely her fault. I just exposed her true self for everyone to see. While she was busy whining about how hard her life was now, she told me that she had several orders of figurines with no one to buy them. She couldn't even sell them online because Stephanie had reclaimed their website domain and put up a disclaimer announcing that their product was discontinued. It said that any figurines sold online were fakes. That left Allison with a lot of product that she couldn't get a return on. That felt like karma to me. I had to sit down and talk with Stephanie about everything later on. I apologized for dropping a bomb like that on her, but she completely understood. She said she appreciated finding out what kind of person she was working with before they had gotten too deep into business together. She also apologized for being used as a cover story and assured me that she would have let me know if she'd been aware of what they were doing. I let her know that I didn't blame her at all. Tyler and Stephanie had used both of us. Stephanie got a taste for being an entrepreneur, and she told me she's in talks about starting a new business. She's invited me to be a part of it in case I'm interested. I think I'll be holding off on investing in anything until after the divorce is finalized. I need to be in a clear headspace before making any huge decisions. All I can say is that you should be careful who you trust. Whether it's your wife or even your best friend, anyone could put a knife in your back with no warning. You've always got to keep your eyes open and learn to trust your gut. I learned that the hard way. It sucks that your financial investment in the business is probably gone, but I get why that wasn't really the point for you. What they did to you, and to Stephanie, deserved consequences, and I think you delivered them in the most direct, satisfying, and honestly classy way possible. You gave them the truth and let their own words sink the ship. What would you have done if you were in this situation? Thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you soon.